Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Senior Scuba. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about dual rebreather science, getting into some more of the actual math and how I calculated a lot of my decompression schedule, my gases, and so forth. Unfortunately, I was not able to head and dive the HMS Olympus in Malta. I had to leave 2 days early, cut my dive trip short due to the fact that I needed to head to Italy. I'm actually in Milan right now. Taking care of some business. So unfortunately, I had to cut my trip short and was not able to make it down to that amazing wreck that I was planning on doing. So that's going to have to go in the back burner for now, but I will be heading there back hopefully in either 2025 towards the end of the year or maybe in 26. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you very much to Dive Systems Malta for the great service they gave us. It was total VIP service. Simon, the managing director and owner of Dive Systems Malta, was incredible. They did an amazing job with all our gases, our equipment rental that we did. We rented DPVs, and they provided 2 amazing instructors for us that were served as our technical guides throughout all the wrecks that we dove for the 3 days that I was there. So they did an amazing job, and I wanted to say thank you for all the stuff that we did there. The dives that we did were incredible, except for one day. The weather is extremely rough out in Gozo Island. The waves were over 5.5, 6 feet tall with a lot of surge. We jumped in the water to try to make it out to one of the wrecks. Unfortunately, we had to turn due to the very poor visibility and had to cut that short. But the rest of the time that day, we ended up heading back to mainland Malta and did an amazing dive there, and followed by 2 wonderful days of diving. Getting into a little bit about the HMS Olympus, kind of refreshing everybody's memory. That submarine was sunk back in World War II. It sits at a max depth of 130 meters or 430 feet, and the average depth of the wreck sits at 380 feet. What I did to plan for that wreck was several weeks of preparation of diving, and then of course dive planning. So starting right into it, the gradient factor that I dive when I dive deep over Mod 3, which is over 330 feet, I end up switching to a 50-80 gradient factor modified with deep stops and also some other small changes when I start getting clear decompression and I start ascending. So despite it being a 50-80, it's modified with these stops, and I actually don't get out of the water until I'm about 70% surface gradient factor, which I'll explain a little bit later why I do that. Talking about the deep stops, what I do is I take 75% of my maximum depth. So for example, the HMS Olympus is at 430 feet or 130 meters. 75% of that depth is 320 feet. That is my first deep stop. I stay there for about a minute. Then the second stop after that, it will be 265 feet. And then I intercept my 50-80 gradient factor, which is at 210 feet. And then I decompress on schedule every 10 feet until I get to my 20-foot mark. There is where the majority of the decompression is accomplished. When I clear deco there, I ascend from 20 feet to the surface extremely slow at a minimum of about 5 to 7 minutes. Sometimes I'll even drag it on to 10 minutes from there. And I inch up from 20 feet to the surface. I go extremely slow. It is a crucial time in my point of view and several other people that dive deep to come up very slow that last 20 feet. And it really helps on not getting any type of decompression sickness. At least for myself, that's kind of why I do it for. And I throughout the dozens of dives that I've done in the 400 plus foot range, I have not been bent so far, knock on wood. So we will try to minimize that risk as much as possible. The total bottom time on the wreck was going to be 15 minutes with a total run time of 245 minutes. The longest decompression stop, like I mentioned, was at 20 feet, and that was going to be for 90 minutes. Then at 30 feet was about 38 minutes. One of the things that you have to really prepare for a dive like this is the long time of decompression in the water. Mentally preparing for stuff like that is very important. I usually carry my dive bulk with me if I'm able to stage bottles, and I leave it at 20 feet. Whether I'm reading a book or watching a movie, I usually leave my Divolt with a aluminum 40 of O2 in the case I need it to plumb into my rebreathers for any additional gas if I'm starting to run low. So that's kind of what I leave at the 20-foot mark if I am running a stage decompression area or I'm on a downline. That's kind of what I do. If I am doing drift deco, which I've only done 3 times to that depth, I'll do something different. And at that point, I'll will take the decompression model that I'm using in terms of what I stage and what I leave there a little differently. So that kind of changes that a bit. The gases that I used for the dive is my diluent of 878. I had 2 stage bottles, which you can you can say bailout tanks. I had an 80 cubic foot of 975, and I had a 40 cubic foot of 2135, and I'll get into that and why I use that. I also introduce air brakes at the 20-foot mark, and we'll talk about that. So a little bit about how I prepare my gases for something like this and the steps that I take for dive planning. First of all, what I need to do is I need to calculate my O2 and that I'm going to be using for the depth that I'm diving. So for example, my PPO2 of my dill, I do not want to exceed 1.1 at my maximum depth, which here is going to be 430 feet or 130 meters. So for example, on that dive, my maximum oxygen that I'm going to be using to be at 1.1 is about 8%. My bottle actually was just a little bit, actually was 7.5%. to keep it in the 1.1 range, but that's kind of what I did on that. Simple calculation, I take my maximum PO2 of 1.1, divide that by the amount of oxygen that I'm looking to do. At this point, it was 0.08, and then I pretty much divide that out. I am going to get an atmospheres. I subtract 1 atmosphere for the surface, and then I multiply that by 33, and that's going to give me my maximum MOD for that gas, which at that point was 430 feet. So that's how I calculate how much oxygen I want in my dill. That's a preliminary calculation. For then I have to go and calculate my helium. Now my helium is straight. I'm not going to go into how to calculate the equivalent narcotic depth. You guys can look that up and see how you do that. I maintain an END of 100 feet. So the END that I maintain is that. So I'll base the calculation off that. It's approximately 70% for this dive. So at this point in my preparation, my gas would be a gas of 80-70. The problem with the gas of 80-70 is that the gas density is incorrect. So the gas density that I want to maintain is no greater than 6.2 grams per liter. That being said, I need to make sure that the gas that I have blended and that I am doing does not exceed that. So I'm going to get into the gas density calculations to figure that out. So the way I ended up calculating gas density is that I want to go and I want to break the gases that I have out in its parts. So first of all, I have oxygen, which the gas density of oxygen is 1.428. The gas density of helium is 0.179, and the gas density of nitrogen is 1.251. So what I do is that I'm going to set up a math equation at this point, and I'm going to start one by one. So I'm going to take, for example, the gas of 0.08. I'm going to multiply that by 1.428, and then multiply that by the atmospheres that I'm going to be at, which is 14 atmospheres, and that gives me a number of 1.599. I'm going to do the same for my helium and then same for my nitrogen. Going over that again, I just want to quickly go over that. 0.78 multiplied by the gas density of helium, which is 0.179. And then again, I'm going to multiply that times the atmospheres of my depth, which is 14, and it gives me 1.955. And then the remainder of that is going to be how much nitrogen is left in the mix, and that's going to be 0.14. I multiply that by the gas density of nitrogen, which is 1.25, times the atmospheres of 14, and that gives me a 2.452. That, if you add all those three numbers up, gives me 6 grams per liter. And that is for a 878 mix. So if you could imagine this, at 878, I get 6 grams per liter. If I went to my original calculation of 870, obviously my gas density was going to be too large. So I do the gas density of the proper 100% END gas first. And then from there, I will see if my number exceeds 6.2 grams per liter. If that number is too big, then I start working backwards and doing the math to be able to get that number down to 6 grams per liter is where I like to stay. Ideally, I would like to be under that. And the whole reason for that is to be able to breathe. So as you descend in depth, the molecules of gas get larger. And the large molecules are going to have a very hard time going through the semi-permeable membrane inside of your lungs, through the alveoli into your blood. If the gas cannot pass through this, through your lungs into your bloodstream, you are not going to be able to displace the CO2 in your blood and get new oxygen. If that happens, what is going to happen is that you're going to have an increase of CO2 buildup, also causing other issues at that point, and you pretty much will suffocate. And that's kind of what happens. So you could actually take a deep breath, completely fill your lungs with gas, and if your gas density is off at those great depths, you could actually suffocate with your lungs being full of air because the gas density is too large for you to be able to breathe, especially since you're on a rebreather and you're not under pressure. Under pressure of a regular open circuit regulator, you might be able to get to increase the gas density, but I still do not do that because you do have pressure breathing to help you pass that gas into your blood. But again, I do not go over 6.2 grams per liter. This actually holds true also for aviation. And the reason I want to bring this up is just kind of let you guys know that, again, like I spoke to you in my last video, flying and scuba diving science is almost exactly the same. Obviously, certain things are different, but it's exactly the same. So in a pressurized airplane, as I go up, most people have here watching have probably flown, you get a briefing that says, in the event of a rapid depressurization, mask will fall from the overhead ceiling. Please put the mask on, blah, yada, yada, yada. So what exactly does that mean? Those masks actually don't do anything for you. I'm not sure if everybody is aware of this. Those masks are just flows oxygen at a very small trickle. That is not oxygen under pressure. It's very different than the masks that the pilots wear. The pilots, we wear something, they're pressure demand masks, which the works like a regulator, just a lot stronger pressure. So when I take a breath on my pressure demand mask, I'm going to take a deep breath and it forces air into my lungs through that semi-permeable membrane into my bloodstream so I could actually breathe at 38,000 feet. The people in the back, unfortunately, do not have those masks. Those masks that you have are not pressure demand, which means that you will pass out. So you will pass out. There is actually a table that we call the time of useful consciousness, and you will pass out. It's seconds at 38,000 feet. Now, the reason you put the mask on is for something else, is when we descend, hopefully the pilots are going to start an emergency descent down to 10,000 feet. And when you get down to 10,000 feet, the oxygen in those small little cup masks will be able to get into your lungs and help you breathe, so you do not die when you are passed out. So you could actually breathe at that point. Eventually you will wake up and everything will be okay. Same thing happens down at depth. The deeper you go, the more important gas density is so you can actually breathe. I wanted to give you guys that kind of frame of reference because it is very important to look at gas density. Many people have died diving deep because their gas densities are too high or getting hypercapnia. So that's what I did on that. My other tanks that I have, I spoke to you about, are 975 and 2135. So why did I choose the 975? I needed a deep gas in the event that I experience hypercapnia, or I experience anything that requires me to just bail out and get on what I consider sanity breaths. So that's the reason I have that gas. That gas is a higher PO2 than my normal gas that I am breathing as a DIL on my rebreather. That gas, I try, depending on how deep I'm going, I do not go over 1.4. At shallower depths, I will go up to 1.6, but anything over 400 feet, I keep it at 1.4. And if I'm going even deeper than 500 feet, in my calculations, I'm gonna be probably at a 1.3. So the reason I do that is I do not want to risk any possible oxygen toxicity issues or in like spiking of O2 in my blood by switching open circuit and causing myself other problems. So I stay ended up staying very conservative on that point. Again, some other deep divers that are listening to this might not agree with this. Again, all this is what Henry plans and what I do for my deep diving. When you're diving these kind of depths, you choose what you want to do. You obviously have the experience and the know-how to dive deep. So I expect you guys to take and do the dive planning that you feel comfortable with or you want to do. So that's kind of what I did. For me, I keep it at 1.4. I chose a gas of 975, and the gas density of that gas is just over 6.2 liters, which I'm okay, because if I get on that gas, I am leaving the depth that I'm at. I am going to start an ascent immediate up. So the gas density is going to decrease as I decrease in depth. So that's why on this calculation, I kept the helium a little lower, and my gas density went up just a bit. So that's kind of what I did. The next gas that I carry was 2135, and that gas, I did the same calculations for its gas density. That gas density on that was at 6.2 grams per liter. And where I'm planning on doing my gas switch on that gas is 1.6. So I'm gonna breathe the 21. If I need 2135, I will be breathing that all the way to about 200 feet. Then I will switch to use my bottom gas at that point. Same thing coming up. One of the other things that I have to look at for those two gases is, in the event, for whatever reason, let's say I ended up getting a very bad hypercapnia hit and I needed to ascend on open circuit until I get to a depth that I'm gonna feel better and I can get back onto my rebreather, I have to also look at something called isobaric counterdiffusion, IDC. What this is that is the amount of helium and nitrogen are kind of using the same road per se in your veins, and you don't want to have them clash together. So what we do is we make a calculation by taking the fraction of helium on your DEEC gas and the fraction of helium on your DECO gas, and you divide that and you subtract those two and divide it by 5. That number is what I would consider number A. After that, I'm going to figure out the fraction of nitrogen on my deep gas and the fraction of nitrogen on my DECO gas. I'm going to subtract those, and what I'm aiming for is to have A be higher than B. If B is higher than A, I'm gonna, in theory, I'm gonna run into isobaric counterdiffusion. Now, this is something that some people don't believe in. Other people do. Again, all this is theory, and decompression theory is that, just theory. For me, I follow it. Like I said, I try to stay very conservative. From everybody that I've colleagues of mine and friends of mine that dive to depths much higher than I dive, that dive in the 5, 6, 7, 800 foot range, they take very close attention to these numbers. So I'm learning from them, and I'm trying to understand and make everything as safe as possible for myself. So that's kind of what I do with that. So I do take in consideration all the stuff for isobaric counterdiffusion and make sure that I am looking at every variable during my calculations. Now, I talked about sanity breaths and why I have the tanks on my sides. The hypercapnia is something that's extremely, extremely dangerous at depth. Anything over 400 feet, you really have to start thinking about what you're going to do at that depth and how you're going to execute your dive and your contingency plans during the depth. It's very important that you try not to work hard at that kind of depth. If you are working hard, you have to really be careful, and the deeper you go, the less work you can do. I can tell you, I had a friend of mine that dove very deep, that was in excess of 500 feet, and just by dropping a bolt snap and swimming to get it, and not even a long distance, we're talking about maybe 10, 15 feet laterally swimming to get the bolt snap before it dropped, he got hypercapnia and ended up having to descend. Luckily, he caught himself very quickly, bailed out to open circuit, ascended, and it took him almost 90 minutes from what he said for him to start feeling normal again after he got back on his rebreather and literally just relaxing and not doing nothing, being almost in a catatonic state to be able to feel better. So it's extremely dangerous to get hypercapnia at those depths. You can very easily end up killing yourself. So it's something that you have to look at. For example, when I'm diving deep to those depths, I always have my DPV with me. I try not to swim whatsoever. So that's kind of what I do for myself. And of course, planning the dive with the proper gases is imperative so you can be okay. Now, leading up to this dive or any of the dives that I've done, like I said in my last video, my deepest dive has been 460 feet. And leading up to my dives to get up to 460 feet, I normally in the week before or maybe up to 2 weeks before, I start diving depths much higher and trying to work up into it. I don't just go and dive 460 feet from one day to the next. That's something I do not do. I helium load, and what that means is that in the week, at a minimum, sometimes 2 weeks before, I start diving depths from 60 meters onward. So before I actually came to Malta, I was diving about 4 times a week. The week before I came over here, and I was doing depths in the 60 meter range, 70 meter range, and I did a dive to 100 meters, and I was helium loading. Now, what does that mean? I prepare my body for the large amounts of helium that I'm going to be breathing while I'm down there. So my mix, as I said, was about 878. That is almost a heliox mix. So it is very high levels of helium. One of the things that you have to be careful about is HPNS. That, for those who do not know what that is high pressure nervous syndrome, and that brings on a large amount of shakes and jitters and creates a havoc with your nervous system because of the high levels of helium in your system. Despite helium being an inert gas, that is one of the byproducts of breathing high levels of helium at depth. Now, it is very dangerous at depths over 500 feet. But at depths over 400 feet, there have been people that have gotten HPNS. And again, it is all dependent upon your anatomy and how you react to helium. So talking to other friends of mine as my journey has come along with all the deep diving that I'm doing, I end up helium loading before I start doing dives over 400 feet. I prepare and work my way up to that because I try to maintain as much margin of error and safety as I can. And so that's kind of why I do all this. Is it working? Honestly, I do not know. I have not done any dives without doing that. So I can't tell you, no, I feel worse if I do not do that. And I do not want to find out when I get down to 430 or 500 feet that all of a sudden I am susceptible to HPNS. Don't want to be there. Don't want to experience it. If I can avoid ever having hypercapnia, or I can avoid ever having HPNS due to deep diving, I am going to do that. I know eventually you're going to be bit. That comes with the territory of deep diving, and hopefully you react correctly as to how you're going to handle that dive and the situation that you have. That is why I dive dual CCR very often now. Even at depths of 130 feet or 40 meters, I'm diving dual CCR almost all the time. My dive buddies and people who see me diving in South Florida, I dive dual CCR a lot. Is it necessary? No. Is it give me added complexity? Absolutely. Diving dual CCRs is a lot of work. It's a lot of oversight and a lot of preparation. A lot of preparation with when it comes down to doing my pre-dive checklist when I'm assembling my units, my checks. Every time I assemble my units when I'm diving dual CCR, I check the IP pressures of my first stages. I check all my hoses, make sure that my pressure and everything else on those hoses is not being let out anywhere. That all my hoses are solid and they're not showing any types of wear or rust. If there's anything like that, I change a hose. I do not take any risk with my gear. My gear has to be as good as new every time I dive. I have spare first stages and spare regulators and spare loop hoses and spare everything for both my rebreathers in the case I need something. I change on my dual rebreathers, I change my oxygen sensors every 6 months for my galvanic sensors, and I do have solid state sensors that I keep an eye on as well, and those are in there as well. So my galvanic sensors, whether they're working or not working, they're changed every 6 months. I also try to look at all the hosing that are inside. For example, my Revo, there's small Festo type size hosing that runs my diluent and my gas. Those hoses are inspected every time I put the unit together for any kind of leaks, also for any type of wear or kinking or binding. So I really take the time to prepare that. So yes, diving dual CCR on a regular basis to 130 feet might be a pain, but at this point, I don't feel that diving dual CCR, now that I've been doing it for about 8-9 months now, is enough time for me to say that it's second nature. So I am doing it often until I feel that I am 100% proficient. When am I going to feel that? No idea. I dive about 3 times a week if I'm not flying, and even when I'm flying, as you see, I'm diving. So my habits are I want to turn my habits into a well performed checklist for assembly, emergency procedures, and normal pre-dive and during dive. So that's kind of what I do to prepare for everything. Aside from the stuff that I spoke to you about, the other things that I like to look at when it comes down to deep diving, obviously, I do extensive research on the wreck that I'm going to be at. I try to watch as many YouTube videos that I can find of other divers that have been on the wreck. I do research at historical societies. I do research anywhere I can if I'm actually doing a specific deep wreck, to make sure that that I'm not missing anything. Possible snag points. Is the boat in shipping lanes? Is it in fishing lanes? I try to speak to the people who have dove it last to see if maybe, are there any kind of hazards that I should be aware of before going down to this. Preparation when you're doing these types of dives is imperative. For the most part, not a lot of people are diving, as a big team. If you are, for myself, like I said, on my HMS Olympus, I was going with one other diver. Obviously, if you have an expedition, for example, to the Britannic, you might have a team of 4 or 5. But at some of the wrecks that I've done in the 400 plus foot range, believe it or not, I've been by myself. It's not many people are diving to the depths that I'm diving, so I'm kind of stuck doing stuff on my own. I do have support divers that I dive with that stay at the depths that they're certified with, whether it's Mod 3 or Mod 2, that are there to help and to be in the water for me. But sometimes and actually a good majority of the time I am alone. So I need to make sure that everything is working, and that's why I'm more conservative as to what I am doing and how I'm preparing for everything. I don't try not to take any risk and so give myself any undue stress while I'm in the water. Also, preparation prior for me diving something that big. I actually take, again, this is just coming from some other, people that I've spoken to, physicians and hyperbaric doctors and so forth. I try to do very light cardio the day before a deep dive. I also take aspirin 24 hours before I do a deep dive to help dilate my veins so I can on gas and off gas better. And then the morning of my dive, I end up eating dark chocolate, which is recommended to me by several good friends that do this kind of dive, that helps as an antioxidant and kind of helps with your stabilizing your glucose while you're on your dive. Of course, hydration is incredibly imperative before this. I actually, I would say super hydrated, if that's even a thing. Usually about 4 days before my dive, I am taking electrolytes and water, and I drink an enormous amount of water the days before my dive. And then the morning of my dive, I keep my breakfast very light. I have maybe some fruit, something very, very light, so I don't upset my stomach and I have a heavy stomach or anything else. And then eat my chocolate, and then that's when I do my dives. Everything affects your your nervous system and your body, so you need to treat the dives as serious as you can, and also your diet the upcoming days to your dive, and of course the day of your dive. It's very important. If your body is not 100%, the dive gets called. I actually call the dive, and I'm very I would say. Now it's susceptible. Excuse me that I just lost my train of thought there. I'm extremely careful on everything that I do. If I have any sort of problem, I call the dive. If I have any problem with my gear as I descend, the dive stops. I leave the water. And it's something as simple as, my one of my sensors peaked and came down, or my lights aren't working as promised, or it just doesn't feel right. I am calling my dive. It's not my job. I don't have to go down there. I'm not saving the world by diving down to a wreck at 460 feet. It is a strictly recreational tech diving for me. So if I can't do it, I can't do it. It is what it is. I prepared for probably several months to dive to the Olympus. Came out here, dove some amazing wrecks, and I wasn't able to dive the Olympus. It is what it is. I lost a good amount of money coming out here, but who cares? The preparation to me is just as important as the dive was, and I think I was very well prepared to accomplish the dive, and I'm very certain that everything was going to go very well on it. I prepare, I plan my dive, and then I dive my plan. That's kind of how I do things. So I appreciate you guys taking the time listening to me on this. If there's any other questions, please leave them in the comments. If you have any other comments or anything you want to say about my dive planning, please, I'm open to suggestions from anybody that's done this kind of diving. I'm always want to learn. For me, I consider myself very novice when it comes down to the deep diving. I've only been doing this for about a year, doing these very deep dives. So I'm learning. I know a lot of my friends like Isa from the Aqua Charm Tech College. When I'm talking to Dr. Joe Duturi, speaking with several other of the people that are diving extremely deep. These people have been doing it for a very, very long time. So I'm learning from them. I'm learning as much as I can from other people that have done this kind of stuff, from articles that have been written. So I take all the advice that everybody wants to post on there. If you do this kind of dives, I look at it, I see it, I take it into note, and if it works for me, I do it. So thank you very much again. Don't forget to hit that bell button and like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.